CBN moves to arrest Naira slide, vows crackdown on speculators on page 25. The Daily Times, NLC warns of indefinite nationwide strike if petrol price rises again. And then you also see there, State House new permanent secretary assumes office, but Niger junta to slam treason charges on Bazoum. That's above the masthead. This Nigeria, we will shut down economy without notice if PMS price rises again. NLC wants federal government. And Naira slide, CBN moves to crack down on speculators. Military loses helicopter pilot in Niger as bandits ambush kill 13 soldiers. And then Niger could consider women, children, seek dialogue with coupists. UN urges ECOWAS on page 7. New National Star, be ready for unannounced nationwide strike, NLC tells federal government. In the end, you also want to look at that story. FX market volatility, CBN malls new measures to curb speculators' antics, and that's on page 8. Daily Independent, telcos revenue to swell as more workers work from home. Employees now use transport costs to pay for telecom services, rely on telecom services for business transaction. You also want to look at that. NLC dares federal government on upward adjustment of fuel pump price. Leadership just above the masthead, Asari Dokubo, Tinubu bars Niger Delta ex-agitators from Aso Rock. And then leading there, you see Niger, get ready for war, Army Chief tells troops on page 7. And first news, fuel hike, Labour threatens fresh strike. And you see there, Tinubu approves CBN's plans to address forex market volatility, and that's on the front page. The Nigerian News Direct, subsidy removal, nationwide shutdown looms as price hike projection besets Nigerians on page 3. Daily Sun, military jet and rescue mission crashes, flying to Niger State to evacuate soldiers killed, injured by terrorists previous day. Panic grips motorists over anticipated fuel price hike. And then the Nigerian Tribune still looks at that story of petrol pump price, but let's look above the masthead. 7.5% tax component pushes diesel price up on page 7, and CBN still talks there to crack down on speculators on page 6. The Guardian, Tinubu's reforms face stress test amid labor threats, FX scarcity. And then on page 6, you'll find that story. But that picture story shows you fuel at 617 naira per litre, set to rise further as naira weakens, inflation to rise to 22.79%. Now, this day is looking at X arbitrage widens to 206 naira per dollar, enabling round-tripping. CBN vows crackdown. What you also want to see there is above the masthead, their petrol as marketers more 720 naira per litre. NLC warns of worker strike without notice. And then Niger junta will prosecute Bazoum for high treason. The New Telegraph says NLC vows to embark on strike without notice if FCC job racketeering, we receive salaries without working. Beneficiaries speak there on that story. Banditry, major captain, 10 soldiers, many vigilantes killed in Niger State. And Blueprint, amid fresh NLC threat, Tinubu raises concerns over 945 naira per dollar exchange rate. And then Niger, we will prosecute Bazoum accomplices for high treason. Cupid says there's enough evidence against the Poles president. Peaceful resolution remains our best bet. And that's Tinubu on page 6. And Daily Trust, still talking about Niger State. Bandits kill many soldiers in Niger. Pilot dies as NAF helicopter crashes. But you also want to look at that story there. We fear coercion will split our families in Nigeria. Residents with dual citizenship speaks about that. Petrol now 650 naira in Borno or your Delta excuse return in Lagos. And well, you see they work peacefully with NMPP government in Kano. Ganduje tells lawmakers. UN, US, ECOWAS speaks on peaceful conclusion and dialogue with, of course, the coup peace, and of course ECOWAS wading in there. But let's begin with daybreak. I think that's where we start this morning, starting with the NLC threat on fresh strike over possible fuel price hike. Let me start with you, Dr. Maho. A lot of papers did run with this as a lead story as well, and also as a rider. But oil marketers are lamenting on the forex crisis, and NLC saying they may just boom pull the carpet off our feet, and everyone goes on strike. How do you look at that?
Isn't the carpet off our feet? Like I always say, myself and Mojid, we're trying to analyze, the major headline, behind the curtain, and focus on what are the main issue of the day. And one thing is consistent, which has been consistent since the inauguration of this administration: fuel price, removal of subsidy, has been the dominant topic in the news, since May 29th, when, according to Mr. President, he was infused with so much courage and he couldn't wait to remove fuel subsidy. It's common knowledge that, look, you don't open a door you cannot close. What Mr. President did with two of his principal policies is to open a door which he has lost control of. You can't close that door anymore. And in economics terms, you don't open a door you cannot close. Removing subsidy, floating the naira, those two policies goes together. And if you look at the way Daybreak captured the story, the main issue in the news, you can marry it together. One, NLC is threatening strike. Two, the arbitrage rate between what the banks are offering and what is happening in the parallel market, according to what is captured by this day newspaper, is 206 naira. 206 naira is the gap between the banks and the parallel market. So which means the attempt to bring some sanity in the forex market by bridging the gap between the private market and the official rate has not worked. So floating the naira was floating the naira to an eventual death. So what is happening has a direct impact on the prices of petroleum products at the pump. So when it was less than 700, the price of fuel, because we are pricing it in dollar rate now, was 617. Now that the cap seems to be off, the exchange rate has taken a life of its own. There's no doubt, and it is heading towards 1,000. It is now 945. There's no doubt that the pump price of fuel will increase. Mm-hmm. And that is why there was a scramble yesterday between Mr. President and the CBN governor to say, okay, what can we do? What intervention can we put in place in order to address the situation? But at the end of the day, is there really an intervention? What is it going to do? What did the previous administration do? Are you going to start chasing the malams in Zone 4, cutting down trees? Or are you going to force them to sell at a rate which is below what they are buying for, what they acquire those dollars for? So that is the problem. So what the administration need to do, they need to sit down and put their head together. They have lost it, like I said, when you open a door you cannot close. But can you close the door now? That is the question. And that is where, at times when you look at government policy, you want to believe that it is simple enough for them to understand that, look, the previous administration kept this in place for a reason. You cannot just come and you removed it when you had no definite plan in place, or because you are pandering to the wishes of Bretton Woods institution, the IMF and the World Bank, who lured you into it, and midway they seem to have abandoned you. Like we have always said in this program, Nigeria is not a productive economy. When you are not a productive economy, and when the major component that runs your economy is 99% imported into the country, you can't be talking about floating your naira, which the Tinubu administration have done. Nigeria is not a productive economy, and that is what is impacting on the value of the naira.
Okay, let me get in the larger here. I mean, they scramble to clamp down on I mean speculators. What exactly is that going to do? The NLC is saying they will go on strike without warning. Fine, that's almost a warning in its own, because then I mean citizens already know, oh, anytime soon something of that nature can happen. But what is the danger of all this?
Well, clamping down on who exactly? Because yes, we are experiencing an unprecedented level of currency crisis. Our national currency, the naira, has been floated, and it is clearly floating towards the Atlantic Ocean. And if nothing is done about it, because like Doctor has enumerated clearly, we are an import-dependent economy. Even our energy sources are also imported and not produced locally. Petrol, diesel, and so on and so forth. So the currency crisis and our energy crisis appears to be mutually reinforcing at this point. So one is rising and making the other rise. The other one is rising and making this one also to rise. So I think it's a combustible recipe that our economy currently faces. But who are we going to clamp down on? Is it the currency traders or who exactly? You see, in all of this, apart from the fact that Nigeria is not a productive economy that is export competitive enough to drag in foreign exchange in order to support the local currency, even when you float it, but you can support it. The major problem here we're not talking about is corruption. And those that are actually pretending to be worried about it and talking about clamping down on some other entities and individuals are the ones that should look themselves in the face and tell themselves the hard truth. Right from the primary elections in this country to the general elections and to normal transaction between our political leaders and their cronies, everything is now denominated in dollars. It is common today to observe that whenever there is FAC allocation disbursement, the value of the naira depreciates because there's a tendency for mass conversion of local currencies into forex that our political leaders now use freely in this country. It services their luxury lifestyles. It services their consumption. It services their transactions. Everything is now dollarized. You have schools in Nigeria that they pay in dollars openly. You have hotels that accept dollar bills. Everything is now dollarized. And so that in itself, that level of corruption, which should not be, it's a major factor in the current crisis we are facing. And that is why when we tell this president, or we tell him all the time that none of your policy can work if you don't fight corruption thoroughly. None, absolutely none. People don't seem to understand. And he doesn't seem to understand this, and there is no move at all towards tackling corruption. You can't have corruption at this level and expect any policy at all, no matter how brilliant the policy might be to work, especially when even the policies are not as brilliant as some of us have thought before. Because I don't understand how anybody can wake up and remove subsidy on petrol. So 63 days later after that pronouncement, we are still talking about subsidy removal. It tells you that it was something that shouldn't have been done in the first place. How do you float a currency? I don't know anywhere in the world where currencies are floated. There are two things that you cannot subject to market forces to determine its prices. It's currency and energy prices. You can't. Because this is your national asset. Every other thing depends on it. If you don't have a stable national currency and energy security, your economy is built on quicksand, and that is what it is in Nigeria today. It's crumbling. Look at the price of diesel. This government was thoughtless enough to impose VAT on diesel, a major energy product in the manufacturing sector in this country. Something that subsidy should have been imposed on to ease competitiveness of our manufacturing sector. You know, I keep making the analysis that for a country like China that subsidized energy in 2022 to the tune of $130 billion, all range of energy products, $130 billion. What that means is that a shoe that is manufactured in China and imported all the way to Nigeria through Lagos port and ferried down to Aba will be cheaper than the shoe that was produced in area market there. Meaning that the Chinese product will penetrate our market faster and easier, because if I go to the market to buy something, I'll buy the cheaper one that's also better. Because the man in area needs to power his generator with either diesel or petrol. without any form of support, and you have to go and borrow money from the banks at double-digit interest rate, and have to contend with high cost of forex for its import component for its manufacturing. How is it going to compete, even in his own country, let alone export? And the only way a country can grow its economy and drag revenue is to have export competitiveness, which comes with energy security, subsidy on energy. So the entire policy is not only wrong-headed, this complex is not fighting corruption.
We can't export if we're not producing.
So that is why governments all over the world, sensible governments, understand that you need energy to produce. And investment in energy security, which you call subsidy, is not a waste. It's an investment in productivity. Such that when you export your goods and services, government will make this money back through taxes from these companies that are export competitive. There will be employment generation in the country, and those people pay income tax. So generally, the government benefits from the ripple effect of that investment in productivity that now draws in revenue, expand jobs along the value chains of productivity. But in our case, it is not so. And to add salt to injury, this government is not interested at all in fighting corruption. So a situation where trillions of naira are converted almost every month into dollars to service the corrupt lifestyle of our political leadership, how do you expect the naira not to float freely into the Atlantic Ocean on its way to Zimbabwe?
On the way to Zimbabwe, on Venezuela.
Okay.
Adora, let me just lend a voice.
Okay.
President Tinubu said in his last national broadcast that he has been able to save 1 trillion naira through removal of subsidy. Do you think that what Nigerians have gone through or
have lost, what the economy has
have
lost
in the last 2-3 months, is you can quantify it to one in terms of 1 trillion? Is it 1 trillion? Are we even discussing that the fact that a major international conglomerate that has been in Nigeria for the past 51 years packed up and shipped out because it could no longer cope, because the operating environment,
very difficult operating environment
in the Nigerian environment,
the
GSK,
manufacturers of Panadol, for emphasis,
which we know, and other home care products. You know, that alone, if such a company with global reach tells you that the fundamentals of your economy is hostile for them to operate in, just take it as the truth. And for them to pack up, and after 51 years, and they are out of the shores of this country.
Because Nigeria is currently experiencing energy crisis, acute one, and currency crisis at the same time. And so somebody does not seem to understand that.
Yes. You know, at times when we talk about this issue, it's so clear. It's as clear as daylight. Why are economic managers, minders, don't understand these basics? Most of the things we talk about here are O-level economics. Is it that the higher you go, you know, in economics, the
lesser the understanding you have of common economics?
Yes. It's very simple. When you are not productive, you are not productive. And you cannot float your currency when you are not productive. And you cannot run an economy that is riddled with corruption and you say you want to float the naira. Let me tell you, Adora, almost every Nigerian now that has up to 1 million naira
is converting to dollars.
Converting to
dollars.
Store of
value.
Because the naira is no longer a store of value. Yes. Nobody wants to, because you are not sure.
You will lose it though.
Yes.
If you have 1 million in your account today, for example, by tomorrow it might reduce to 700,000. The day after it reduces to 500,000. Progressively. So to show up its value is to convert to dollars. So that on its own,
that is the
it's putting pressure on the naira to continue to slide.
Between May 29th, when Tinubu took power, to date, if you have 1 million in the bank, do you know what the devaluation that has happened to
by almost a quarter?
About a quarter or a half?
By half, yes.
By half. Because it was 454 or something. But by today, we know it is. You don't predict doom for your economy.
But no,
unfortunately, we have to say the truth.
We're not predicting doom. This is what it is.
But this is the truth. There is a run on, on the Nigerian economy. A lot of people feel safer holding dollar than holding naira. Yes. And we've spoken severally here about the dollarization of the economy, which Mojid has highlighted.
Look at what happened during the primary elections. They brought in this set of political leaders. They all bidded for votes in dollars. the election proper, they disbursed dollars. And that's continued.
And the National Assembly have voted 700 billion to procure cars. What kind of cars are they buying?
Foreign-made cars.
Is they not putting additional pressure?
Because they're going to convert the 1 billion into dollars.
So it's a no-brainer when you look at...
Kickbacks are now received more in dollars. And kickbacks are given in dollars. Bribery is now dollar denominated.
So when you look at all these issues, these are the fundamentals. Now when the CBN, like you asked the question of what is the CBN...
Who are they going to clamp down on?
Who are you climbing down on?
So clamp down on
yourself. Clamp down on corruption.
Simple.
In order to correct the system.
If you clamp down on corruption, you can fix our refineries to kickstart local production of energy products that we need, like petrol and diesel. If you also fix our refineries, it will bring down, of course, the price of commodities.
No matter what people say.
I mean, you're saying, look at what Lukman is saying. I mean, talking about corruption. He said APC chairman Ganduje's emergence signals Tinubu not ready to fight corruption.
No.
And
it's a no-brainer now. Sometimes we refrain from from touching personalities. Here was a man that was seen cut on tape, stuffing dollars from a contractor. I mean, I was just talking about dollarization of corruption in Nigeria. Accepting dollar kickbacks from a contractor and stuffing into his pockets and all of that. We saw videos. And then our president, the president of Nigeria, who is supposed to be the moral compass of this nation, who is supposed to be the embodiment of everything that is morally upright, ethical, and righteous, has supported such an individual to become the chairman of the ruling party. That is an endorsement of his corrupt practices. And you expect anything to go right with Nigeria under this second system. I think sometimes I don't want to talk about the president so much because the way he's lowering the bar of leadership, the way it's amazing.
Kind if you say
it's very
lowered. The bar of leadership has been removed
and thrown away and probably broken into pieces.
Have you done an analysis of the? We are not even then. When the National Assembly has graciously confirmed about 45 ministers. So what stopped the president from, at least for the sake of hitting the ground and running, whether he's running backward or forward, is left to be seen. Even giving portfolios to this minister 1 week after, 8 days.
To show readiness?
Yes, that he's ready to lead. But you are bamboozling us every day with issues of Niger Republic that has no bearing on how I get money to put fuel in my car. These are fundamental issues. At times you don't want to seem as if you are too passionate about
you are
this
too
issue.
critical.
You are too critical.
You wonder whether they
common
are... sense no longer common.
Yes.
Look at the problems you are facing.
Yes.
And you don't have a cabinet in place.
In place.
Okay, like our president is chairman of ECOWAS, and he's practically leading ECOWAS efforts and intervention in Niger. Without a foreign affairs minister. You begin to wonder, how come we have so much or so many blunders in this intervention? Because you begin to wonder why a country that is facing the kind of challenges we are facing economically and security-wise, you begin to wonder what exactly is our business with what is happening in Niger. You begin to wonder. And you begin to wonder the kind of sanctions they have taken that is like pulling the trigger on yourself. Every of the action our president has taken against Niger has a boomerang effect on Nigeria. In fact, it's affecting Nigeria much more than it's affecting Niger. Nigeria has closed their airspace, for example, against Nigeria. And so what does that mean? A 6-hour trip to the UK is now 9 hours because you have to take a detour.
And you have to pay more.
Tickets.
But that one does not affect people like us. So it is there that goes there for treatment that is affecting more. Now, you have blocked the border. The trade between Nigeria and Niger is dominated by Nigerian businessmen. We have a trade surplus with Niger. So it is Nigeria that is losing from that blockade. And you have gone ahead to cut off electricity supply to Niger in violation of our agreement with them entered into in the 60s, that they should not dam their own end of the River Niger to allow us dam at Kainji, and then we'll sell energy to them.
When you do that, what happened to trust in future?
So that means they can, at this point, decide to now dam their own end of the River Niger, and that will spell doom for Kainji
and Shiroro.
So you begin to wonder, who is advising our president? Look at the multinational joint task force that was established to help tackle Boko Haram insurgency and all other forms of terrorism around the Sahel that borders Nigeria. Niger is is an important part of that alliance. It's like a Sahelian military alliance. Niger is the 4th contingent in the multinational joint task force with headquarters in the Difa region. And the Nigerian contingent, because Nigeria is like one of Nigeria's closest allies. What Nigeria is to Nigeria is what Canada is to the United States. The Nigerian contingent gives adequate cover on the flanks of our Nigerian forces in the operation, in the theater, in the war theater, during operations. They are there, they are solidly behind us, and they are cooperating. If the military junta in Nigeria today decides to yank off their contingent from multinational joint task force, what happens to our struggling armed forces on the ground? Look at what has happened just yesterday. It was a tragedy for armed forces.
Yes.
Not only were ground forces ambushed, with a captain and a major losing their lives alongside other soldiers. The helicopter that was sent by the Air Force to go and rescue them crashed as well. So meaning
double jeopardy.
Double jeopardy. At a time we are preparing for war with Niger over a purely internal affair of a neighboring country.
But let's look at this Guardian story. I mean, Alhaji Majid. On one hand, it says Niger, U.S. mounts pressure on Tinubu as ECOWAS fumes over mixed signals. And somebody asked the question yesterday, is this war to Niger? Is it about ECOWAS intervention or is it a Tinubu intervention?
It's a Tinubu intervention. And people should stop blaming the U.S. Why is the U.S. not invading Niger by themselves?
They have soldiers on ground.
Why is France?
France has soldiers on ground.
France has a military cooperation with the Bazoum administration. And they stood by and allowed the coup to happen. So why are they not directly intervening? Do we have a uranium field that we are mining in Niger? It is France and China. So why are these people not actually intervening? It is a Tinubu affair. You see, it was wrong of ECOWAS to have given Tinubu the chairmanship of ECOWAS. You know why? He's a rookie president without experience. And his inexperience is what we are seeing now. As a president, as a leader of any country, within a multilateral institution like ECOWAS or United Nations, your personal interest of the interest of your country must always come first before anything. And if the president had put the interest of Nigeria first in this instance, you know what you should have done? Once there was a change of government in Niger, he would send an envoy. Presumably, his Minister of Foreign Affairs should have been in place since May 29th. So you send your Minister of Foreign Affairs into Niger to first and foremost secure guarantees from the new regime in Niger on all security, energy, and economic cooperation as it has been existing and its continuity. When that is guaranteed, it means your Nigerian interests have been satisfied. You can now send ECOWAS envoy now to go and ask them to put in place a timetable for return to democratic governance. And you leave it at that. That is all. Nothing more than that. Because military coup, whether I like it or not, is still a feature in West Africa because of the failure of democratic governance structures to deliver welfare and security to citizens of West Africa. So military coup is still here as a reality. It's becoming fashionable once more. And the only antidote to democratic sustenance, the only antidote to coup plots and military intervention is democratic good governance. Because the greatest threat to democracy in Africa is not the military. It is those that call themselves Democrats that have refused to rule in line with the rule of law, that have refused to deliver dividends of democracy to the people in form of improved welfare and security.
And Majid, I mean, different papers are giving us strokes. I mean, Daybreak says where the military say they have not been given any charge to move into Niger. There's no attempt to do that. But on the other hand, leadership says get ready for war. Army chief tells troops. And Tinubu has barred the Niger Delta ex-agitator from Aso and somebody says, well, it's about time. I don't know if that means anything in terms of real-time politics.
Yeah, good for him, because we know immediately he became more emboldened after he had that first visit to Aso Rock. He became more emboldened and threatened everybody that came his way, threatening a sitting governor, parading his militants openly and making videos out of it. It's about time. I think going forward, it's unfortunate that it seems as if Tinubu is learning on the job, but he shouldn't learn on the job at the expense of our national security. All
right, thank you so much, Dr. Austin Maho and Alhaji. Of course, Majid's well insightful thoughts there. Perhaps the president will take a leaning and a learning from some of the sites you have brought to this morning's review.